All right, is my screen visible? Yes, okay. Okay, so I'd like to present some findings having dug into the time origin attribute a little bit over the last few weeks. We, for our run product for Impulse and Boomerang, utilize, of course, a lot of the performance timing APIs. And a lot of the time we want to or need to convert things like time origin or DOM high-res timestamps into a date, an actual timestamp, wall timestamp. And so in reviewing our JavaScript code for Boomerang.js, I found in many places we were using time origin, the attribute performance time origin. And in many other places, we were using the alternate attribute, or the earlier attribute, which is performance.timing.navigation start. And I found a lot of challenges in doing this. I was trying to be consistent even in our internal code to always use time origin, which is a more modern interface, but have not been able to do so. And I don't believe we actually can based on some of these challenges. So I wanted to bring it to the group and just confirm a couple things, maybe ask for some clarifications in the spec, and then point out some browser issues that I was seeing as well, because there may be some people here that could help with that, of course. So what is the meaning of time is the subtitle of this presentation. So in the beginning, the very, very first thing that this working group shipped was navigation timing. And in that, we had performance.timing.navigation start. And that is a Unix epoch-based timestamp, a very large number. And we would often use that as kind of like the basis for, again, when the user clicked or opened a browser to navigate, etc. All of the timestamps under performance.timing are in Unix epoch-based timestamps, so they all look this big. And some of you may or may not know that we have actually since deprecated the timing interface. And the suggestion is to use the performance observer and the getting the entry of navigation instead. But that's a kind of separate topic. So in the beginning, we had this interface. You can look at it to see the actual timestamp of when the navigation started, and it's now listed as deprecated, though everybody still ships this interface. And with that navigation start epic timestamp, we also had some friends. It had another interface that we know of called the DIME high-res timestamp. What a mouthful. You would access that by using performance.now, for example, and that gives you a DOM high-res timestamp back. This is in milliseconds, and what you can do is then you could convert this performance.now timestamp that you got, and if you added it to your time origin or to navigation start, you get kind of the equivalent, what is the Unix epoch in milliseconds timestamp of now. You can also get these DIME high-res timestamps by any of the performance entries, of course. Start time and all of the other attributes with performance entries are in DOM high-res timestamp. So with their powers combined, you can take a DOM high-res timestamp, you can add it to something like timing.navigation start or performance.timeOrigin theoretically, and if you add the two of them together, you get the essentially the current epoch, right? So the performance.now is always increasing, the navigation start stays the same, but if you add two of them together, you get now-ish. If you're doing math in the browser, and we do this a lot for our RUM. We often convert to DOM high-res timestamps to know what the start or end time of something was for various reasons. So that sounds all straightforward. And then we said, let there be time origin. So time origin is an evolution, I think, that happened in navigation timing 2. It's just an attribute on performance. Instead of it being performance.timing.navigation start, it's just the performance.time origin. It can be in microsecond resolution. It's optional. And it's meant to be the evolution of what navigation start was once we deprecated that timing interface. We needed to still have the start timestamp, so we moved it to a timeOrigin attribute, made it a thing that may have higher resolution, and then we deprecated the old interface at the same time. So theoretically, one would assume that you could apply any of the same math we did before to performance.now plus performance.timeOrigin, and you would get the current-ish time. So what many of us do in RUM is, we gracefully fall back to whatever interfaces are available for us. I was asking some questions in the WebPerf Slack a little bit while ago about who's using timeOrigin, navigation start, etc. And Todd at Request Metrics had said this is essentially the code that they use, and this kind of mirrors some code that we have in Boomerang. But if you want to get your timeOrigin for your analytics script, you would first look at performance at timeOrigin. If not, you look at timing.navigation start, and if not, just fall back to date.getTime, which does not have the same benefits of the other two interfaces. And then you can do a new date plus, getting those two, your current timestamp and then your timeOrigin, or I guess that should be my timeOrigin, to get now, theoretically. So I started going down the path of changing our library to be more consistent and always use timeOrigin if available, falling back to navstart, falling back to datetime, and started getting a lot of problems with our testing suite. And I started digging into it, and I'm just seeing a lot of funny things. So one confusing part to me is, what if the timeOrigin and navigation start are different? What does that mean? Internally, I would have thought that timeOrigin and navigation start should have always been the same thing, because we basically moved it from performance at timing to timeOrigin, and then it was supposed to be the same timestamp when the user clicked. In practice, it can be very different. For example, in the most recent Firefox and Safaris, they may be plus or minus 1 millisecond, and maybe that's just due to rounding. I don't know, but I don't know why, if it was due to rounding, and either both Firefox and Safari don't show a microsecond resolution, why they wouldn't just always be the exact same. Are we rounding one differently than the other, or they should just be the same, in my opinion, my professional opinion. And Safari shows the same thing. In Chrome, we also do see a difference. However, we see the difference being the difference in navigation start not having microsecond resolution, and timeOrigin we do see it. And so the two of those, it's more obvious in that way, right? The difference between timeOrigin and navigation start is because of just the available resolution of that interface between the two of them. So that makes a little bit more sense to me. So if anything, in my opinion, these numbers should always be the same if they have the same resolution. And as Chrome's probably okay here, but these two are slightly more confusing. Of course, that's pretty minor. But can they be different is one of my big questions. There is some text and it's not just my questions. There's many other people have asked this question in various GitHub issues, and I think Chrome Dev mailing lists. I linked to some of these in these slides. And pretty much a lot of the questions in these issues are related to why are they different? Should they be different? Can they be different? Is it a bug? Is it a spec allowed thing? Is it not a spec allowed thing? What does it mean for the navigation start to be different than the timeOrigin? This comment is are they supposed to match? And most responses from us, or variations of the Web Performance Working Group in the past, have said yes, they should match. Previous chairs and other people that responded to issues have all confirmed that was the intent, I think, that they should match. I was looking through the spec, and I was trying to figure out, based on the wording of timeOrigin, could they ever be different? And maybe one case that could allow for the timeOrigin to be different than navigation start is when the browsers launched from a blank slate, possibly, and maybe in that case, because it says the timeOrigin when the browser context is first created, and then maybe if the navigation doesn't start for a moment later or something. I don't know. I don't know if that's a spec allowed for them to be different. To me, it's confusing that they could ever be different at all, but maybe it's allowed in the spec. And then, so just some general confusion about that, but I've seen browser bugs as well in all three browsers around this. Here's an example of a Chromium bug. There was some issues with, if I remember correctly, some drift that was happening with timeOrigin, and they would kind of get away from the desired value. I think this one is fixed or currently shipping or going to be shipped soon. But it was resulting in the timeOrigin attribute being different than what you would expect from navigation start. Firefox has a similar issue, where I think in some cases, and possibly in an older version of Firefox, timeOrigin was shared between multiple between the different tabs in a process or something. And I personally experienced examples where there was 10 milliseconds, 400 milliseconds, even 20-hour difference between timeOrigin and navigation start. And I didn't know what to do to make that. And I think in that case, like maybe I started the browser, yesterday, closed my laptop, opened it back up, and checked, and like a new navigation had the difference between the two of those be completely insane. And then Safari has an issue with timeOrigin. Well, it actually changes over time. So like if you query performance.timeOrigin on the exact same page, just over, a few minutes, a few hours, it drifts. Like these are, this is 1 minute apart in timeOrigin. You can see actually this is timeOrigin here, changed from 26 to 28 to 35. And then like a few days later, it was, many hours or many days off of what it had originally started as. And these are probably just all browser bugs, and I'll file browser bugs if I can't find them. I couldn't find anything covering this. But this is confusing. Like this attribute should never change. timeOrigin should never change. So, what if we want to, if we're trying to switch to be using timeOrigin, and if timeOrigin can be different than navigation start, and again, I don't know if that's the case. Doesn't seem to me like logically that should ever be the case, that they could be different. But if the spec allows it, or we have a good reason for that. The other thing that I noticed is that if the two are different, if timeOrigin and navigation start differ by say 10 milliseconds or so, shouldn't the navigation timing's navigation entry have a start time that's not 0? We force it to be 0 in the spec, but if the timeOrigin and the actual navigation were different by 10 milliseconds, the navigation entry start time should not be 0, it should be 10 milliseconds. And our spec forces it to be 0. So I guess there's just some confusion around what is allowed, what should be allowed, and if the timeOrigin and navigation start could be different timestamps, then I think we should allow for getting the navigation entry's start time to also be different as well, instead of being forced to 0. So my summary of all these crazy little edge cases that I'm finding is, I have a question, which is, should timeOrigin and timing.navigation start be the same? Again, this is a deprecated interface. I think it makes more sense for them to be the same, but maybe there's a good reason for them to be able to drift on navigation. I don't know. There's definitely some browser bugs here. Some are fixed, some are in progress being fixed, some I need to file a bug for, so I'll file a bug for that Safari issue. But the end result is I don't think we can reliably use timeOrigin in RUM today as a result. Between all the different browsers behaving slightly differently, and what does it mean if they differ, and just some of the confusion there. Like I'm not confident in using timeOrigin at the moment, and I think I'm just going to keep us using navigation start for now, which is not the goal of this working group. So that is my presentation, and I'd be happy to have discussions if anybody wants to about it.
Let me stop the